National Treasury yesterday delivered its plan to deal with the abuse of COVID-19 funds to the joint sitting of Standing Committee on Finance and the Select Committee on Finance. Finance Minister Tito Mboweni has said that those who are found to have abused funds must face legal penalty. Well, to find out more about Treasury's plans, I'm joined on the line by National Treasury's Director General, Dondo Mogajane. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. So from your perspective as Treasury, what areas have been problematic in the COVID-19 related procurement processes that have led to the kind of abuse, extortion and corruption that we've come to be hearing about in recent weeks?
Thank you for having me. The key problem area is that our instruction notes were not followed through to the letter. Our instruction notes were very clear in terms of the kind of companies that must be awarded opportunity to provide PPEs. And secondly, we had the price was determined. So the price lists were attached to the instruction notes, and we expected accounting officers and departments and public entities to have adhered to this price list thresholds that we had set in the instruction notes.
Now, of course, in your presentation to the finance committees, you talked about plans to tighten up the procurement system across the spheres of government. What are the key proposals and when will these become effective?
The key proposals are that we want to design and integrate and develop an ICT platform that will help us manage centrally some PPEs that needs to be provided. That's one. And secondly, we want to be able to come up with warehousing solutions that are regional based, that will make it easy for PPEs and other material to be supplied to clinics and hospitals. And finally, we need a proper real project management system that will be put in place that will ensure that what we receive and what we store and what we sort and dispatch and distributed can be checked on time, and some just-in-time systems that must be put in place. We want to emulate some of the key advanced systems that the private sector is using, and we must implement that. My team is currently working on options, and we are consulting further with provincial treasuries. We started this morning with MECs for finance together with the Minister of Finance, including explaining what we want to do. We will be consulting further, but we think within the short space of time, maximum 2 months, we should be put in place. What then happens in the 2 months between now? In the 2 months between now, we will be issuing a change in the instruction note that we issued, whereby we cancel the existing instruction note and say, let departments and entities go back to emergency provisions that are provided in law. 2, we will be forcing them to go on to procurement guidelines that are there, that have always been in place, in ensuring that we get quotations, in ensuring that we get the best possible prices, but also adhering to the price that we have set as the National Treasury. So we think before that kicks in terms of this ICT platform solutions that I'm talking about, in the meantime, we will go back to existing methods that departments are accustomed to procuring, that will ensure that there's transparency and openness in the way they tender, they give contracts to suppliers.
But DG, you do say that your original instruction notes to the various arms of government were basically ignored by those people who decided to not behave properly. And now you've tried to tighten things up further. There's always that danger that people are always going to try and find loopholes and perhaps use rules around deviation and all of that. So if people don't respect the latest rules, what are you guys going to do as National Treasury? Do you have a stick that you can bring to bear so that people don't misbehave?
Look, the stick is there and the stick must be implemented. Consequence management process must be set in place. Disciplinary process must be set in place. Where there's acts of criminality, we expect the justice system to come in place and actually take charge. We will, together with the Auditor General, will be issuing guides that will attempt to address the wrongdoing and the misappropriation. And we hope accounting officers will finally take responsibility among themselves, because all of this is built in. And we hope if they are not taking responsibility and putting risk mitigation measures and control measures in place, they must also be taken to task. If I'm the accounting officer of the National Treasury and I can only buy a cloth mask for my staff for 20 rand, why do I be allowed to buy it for 40 rand? And if I buy it for 40 rand, someone in the form of the Minister of Finance, the executive authority in charge, must take me into account and actually discipline me. And I must do the same to my staff. If my head of supply chain is embarking on processes that are untoward and that are contrary to the Treasury instructions, I must take to task that supply chain head or DDG corporate services. So I think it's high time now that accountability must be pinned to where it belongs. And this, in a way, it belongs to the accounting officers. The law entitles them. Our instruction note number 7 of 2021 simply places the responsibility where it belongs, which is the accounting officer. So it's high time that I think executive authority and heads of departments must begin to take responsibility for what's happening in departments, what's happening in provinces and in their own spaces.
I think what you're saying is absolutely spot on. But of course, I think the South African public are quite tired because, that accountability, it should have been there from the get-go. But we continue to see that people are able to misbehave and get away with it. We've had the state capture inquiry, for example, running for the past 2 years, and yet we haven't really seen any prosecutions. It seems as though people are just running things with absolute contempt for the South African public. And now more than ever, when people are losing jobs and the economy is in a dismal state, I suppose it would be quite important that people are seen to be, set as an example when they're misbehaving.
Certainly, I agree with you. I cannot over-agree with you on that. We must set examples. I think public resources are hard to find nowadays. The economy is not doing well. Tax revenues have declined. We've indicated that the supplementary budget that we're expecting 300 billion rand under collection in year one, in this year. Now, we, together with, fellow accounting officers, fellow government employees, fellow public servants, I think it's high time now that we have to say enough is enough. Let's do the right things. Let's ensure that we stretch the rent. Let's ensure that we basically behave in a manner that's expected of us, and actually make sure that we manage the public funds in a way that we recognize that we should have a South Africa tomorrow and a country for our kids. So it's important. I totally agree with you. Something must be done, and something must be done starting with ourselves to start doing the right things.
Mr. Mogajane, we know that obviously you are the DG, you're not the political head of the finance ministry, so you'll answer this the best way that you can. But in terms of the accounting officers in this time, if they are deemed to have done something bad, what will the consequences be?
We expect disciplinary process must be set in motion. We expect that accounting authorities and executive authorities, ministers, MECs in particular, mayors, councillors should take responsibility and take every accounting officer to task if we did not perform with the level that we are required to. Because clearly we are expected as public servants, as accounting officers, to behave and to act in terms of the law and how the law prescribes. If I'm not, I must either be removed. If there's acts of criminality, I must be dealt with. If there's reasons for me to be disciplined, that must happen, and it must happen as soon as possible.
Thank you so much, sir, for your time. That was Dondo Mogajane. He's the Director General in National Treasury. Okay, so we are going to proceed now. Okay, we are going to go for a quick break and have more news for you thereafter.